There are times when good teams are simply not expected to win, either because of a lack of public trust or maybe because their opponents look much stronger. Maybe it's the away game disadvantage. Whatever it is, sometimes, however, these underdog teams can pull off the impossible and silence entire crowds of 50,000 people, giving their own, often tortured fans a long-awaited sense of validation. Here's our countdown to the top underdog stories in the NFL. Number 7. Cowboys vs. the Raiders, 2021. On Thanksgiving 2021, the Dallas Cowboys faced off against the Las Vegas Raiders in a heated contest that consisted of fistfights, bleeding referees, and an upset win in overtime all in one. Coming in as the betting favorites to win, the Cowboys had a tough time getting their offense side going. The Cowboys were missing two of their best receivers for this game, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and it showed. At halftime, the Raiders were already leading the game by 17-13. In a penalty-stricken match, and despite losing their star tight end, Darren Waller, to injury, the Raiders steadily kept scoring. With just 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Daniel Carlson hit his fourth field goal for the Raiders, edging in front of the Cowboys. But Greg Zuerlein replied with his own 45-yard field goal with just seconds left on the clock, sending the game into overtime. The Cowboys ran out of gas in overtime, though, and Carlson kicked in his fifth field goal to seal the victory. It was an especially crushing loss for the Cowboys, who have Super Bowl ambitions this season, but for the Raiders, it was a hard-fought end to a 3-game losing streak. Not only that, but it was their first win on Thanksgiving since 1968. Number 6. Tennessee Titans vs. the Baltimore Ravens, 2019. The Baltimore Ravens were dominating the 2019 NFL season, coming in as the number 1 seed in the AFC, and were clear favorites to win against their longtime rival, the Tennessee Titans. Their quarterback was nominated for the league MVP, and they were so dominant that they even broke the record for the most rushing yards in a season. But the Titans had also beaten the defending Super Bowl champions, the New England Patriots, just last week, and had some momentum behind them. As the two rivals clashed, the Titans quickly figured out a way to completely shut down Lamar Jackson, Ravens quarterback and NFL MVP, and with strong performances from Derrick Henry and quarterback Ryan Tannehill, beat the Ravens 28-12. Derrick Henry, who was leading the NFL in rushing yards that year, proved to be a constant thorn in the Ravens' side, as he ran 195 yards in the game and even threw a touchdown pass. The Titans versus the Ravens rivalry is one of the tightest in the NFL, with the score tied at 13-13 each. The Titans won the next year as well, but the Ravens finally ended the 2-game losing streak thanks to a game-winning interception by Marcus Peters in 2021. Number 5. Minnesota Vikings vs. San Francisco 49ers, 1987. In one of the most surprising postseason wins, the Minnesota Vikings shocked the nation as they went on to defeat the most dominant team in the NFL that year and advance to the championship game. During the 1987 season, which had already been shortened due to strikes, the 49ers were the ranked 1 team for both offense and defense. They were a dynasty with a record of 13-2 so far in the season, and were led by future Hall of Famers Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, while legendary Bill Walsh coached the team. Meanwhile, the Vikings were only 8-7 for that year, and on paper, were supposed to be no match for the 49ers. Coming in as 11-point favorites, the 49ers got off to a rocky start right from the get-go. Joe Montana, for what seemed like the only time in his career, could not throw the ball. He threw probably some of the worst passes in his career, leading to interceptions. On the other hand, Anthony Carter was going off and catching every seemingly impossible catch thrown towards him. He caught and ran for an astonishing 227 yards that game. To make matters worse for the 49ers, Joe Montana was substituted for another future Hall of Famer, Steve Young, but even he could not do anything to change the outcome of the game. Bill Walsh later called the loss one of the most traumatic experiences he's had in sports. Number 4. Minnesota Vikings vs. Kansas City Chiefs, 1970. The Vikings are no strangers to heartbreak losses, but in the 1970s, the AFC was just an upstart compared to the NFL, and AFC teams were not considered good enough for primetime television. Meanwhile, the Vikings' defensive linemen were called the Purple People Eaters and had conceded the fewest points in the NFL all season. With a record of 12-2, the Vikings were the clear favorite for the Super Bowl of 1970, but the Chiefs had their own tricks up their sleeves. The Vikings had never studied an AFC and were completely unfamiliar familiar with the formations used by the Chiefs. Hank Stram ran elaborate plays, resulting in a 16-0 lead at halftime. The rest of the game was all KC as well, with the Vikings only scoring one touchdown the entire game, ending with a final score of 23-7. Later in an interview, Viking quarterback Joe Kapp said that the Chiefs' defensive line resembled a forest of redwood trees, and that they were very active and were able to take the ball away from them all game. Len Dawson, the QB for the Chiefs, ended his terrible year with one of the crowning achievements of his life and was voted the league's MVP that year. Number 3. The Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Denver Broncos, 1996. In 1996, the Denver Broncos were 13-3 and were the number 1 seed in the AFC. Their quarterback, John Elway, was known for having the best arm in the league that season and seemed unstoppable. In addition to that, he had Terrell Davis backing him up as a running back. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jaguars had only been around for a couple years and were considered upstarts in the NFL. Some in the newspapers even called them the Jagwads, but they were a team desperate to prove themselves. They did not care that they were 14-point underdogs, and the events that followed in Denver could very well be a story tale. They, rightfully, thought that the Broncos would be rusty, so they went into the match with no fear of losing. Early in the game, the Broncos looked like the stronger team, but the Jaguars fought back hard and took the lead in the second quarter and never relinquished it after that. Running the ball with consistency, the Jaguars had a good solid game plan, to which the Broncos seemed to have very few answers. The final nail in the Broncos' coffin was the entry of Mark Brunell, who threw for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns while running back. Natrone Means also rushed for 145 yards as well. The game went down in history as the most one-sided win in the NFL playoffs. Number 2. The New York Giants versus New England Patriots. The New York Giants met the New England Patriots in the final of the Super Bowl of the year 2007, considered by many as the greatest Super Bowl game ever played, as well as the greatest upset in sports history. The Giants managed to stop a seemingly unbeatable Patriots side to become champions for the 3rd time. The Patriots entered the finals as the 12-point favorites, coming off a perfect season with no losses or ties. This was a remarkable feat in itself, and the last team to accomplish this was the 1972 Miami Dolphins. The Giants, on the other hand, had finished the season 10-6 and were looking to become the first team to win the Super Bowl as an NFC wildcard team. The two teams had previously locked horns in the same season, where the Patriots had emerged victorious and looked set to do so again. Down 14-10 in the fourth quarter, the Giants fought back with a 32-yard drive, with only 2.5 minutes left on the clock. David Tyree made the memorable helmet catch to complete the first down conversion, and wide receiver Plaxico Burress went on to score the game-winning touchdown with only 35 seconds remaining. The Giants' QB, Eli Manning, was named the MVP for that NFL season. Number 1. New York Jets versus Baltimore Colts, 1969. A story that American football fans can never forget is one of Joe Namath's guarantee of a victory over the NFL champions, the Baltimore Colts, in the first ever Super Bowl. Without blinking an eye, the quarterback said the unthinkable, and then proved that it's not boasting if you can back it up. The New York Jets came in as the underdogs, with an odd of 19.5 against the Colts. In those days, it was widely believed by experts and fans alike that the AFL teams were no match for the NFL teams, and that the Colts would run all over the Jets. Then, while making an appearance at the Miami Touchdown Club, Joe Namath personally guaranteed victory in front of fans, making national headlines. He was mocked by many who did not believe him, but those voices fell silent as the Jets controlled the entire championship game. They managed to earn a lead of 16-0 by the fourth quarter and won the game decisively in the end. Namath, who threw 17 completed passes, was named the MVP, which made him the first MVP in NFL history to not have scored a touchdown. The game went down as one of the greatest upsets in sports history to this day. So concludes our list of the top upsets and underdog stories in the NFL. I hope you enjoyed reliving these amazing games again. Subscribe and stay tuned for next time.